Hey, everybody. Welcome to Smooth Finish. This is our fourth episode. Really, this is going to be an introduction to an education series that we want to talk to you about. Got a lot of exciting stuff going on at the NPC and wanted to make sure, we shared it with you. We're going to be talking to some folks, Jana Auringer on this call. Talk about her more here in a minute. But we want to focus on, in this series, want to focus on our education content build that we're creating here at NPC. It's based on our tech manual, which, is the foundation of our organization, and really the industry outreach we're going to be doing with that. So we kind of want to, one person we want to give credit to here that really showed us that our education means something to the industry. Of course, Mr. NPC, as a lot of you knew him, Greg Garrett. He was an inspiration to a lot of us. And so we're gonna do the introduction of inspiration of people, efforts, and resulting content happening at the NPC. So as far as Greg goes, he was one of the founders. Jana on here too with us, and Randy Dukes. The startup is what a lot of people know us for, and that's where we learned from Greg with his efforts out into the field, going out and preaching the water startup that we promote and take from our tech manual and comes from our startup card. He showed us that people wanted that. They wanted that information, and they came to us for that information. So we want to make sure we take those types of subjects, get them out there. Greg was a tireless advocate and educator for us, and the idiosyncrasies, what I'd say, of Plaster to the industry and the pool environment. Plaster, people, they service water for sanitation. We have to service water for sanitation, of course, but other things. So, and of course, he was our director of technical services before his passing. So in the first part of this, we talked about, so Greg's our inspiration. We talked about the people. So some of the people, anyway. We got the two guys that you know from our original shows. You got Chris and Rob. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Hello, Will.
Hello. Happy Friday the 13th in 2020. What could go wrong?
Nothing yet. Don't jinx us, Chris. So, and then, of course, we're very happy to have what I'll call the torchbearer for us. And not only since Greg's passing, but for a long time, Jana has been an educator for the NPC. She's put herself out there for us and really helped people understand what's important to plaster. I met her, I would say 18 years ago, matter of factly on a pool inspection. and I know her as the pool lady first. But I don't want to steal her thunder. I'd love for Jana to share a little bit of, where she started, where she's gotten to, and then the guys and I will just, ask her some questions and get to know her a little better before we move on to talk about some of the efforts of our education build. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Great to see you.
Really good to see you. So we're also doing this on a Zoom call. So you can watch us on YouTube.
I got started in the industry as I was finishing up some college work and took a part-time job at a plaster company. And things just, I wasn't into school very much. And so I decided when the gentleman started to sell that plaster company, one of the other workers said, I want to start my own company. And so we started a plaster company and did that for 13 years. I got my education in plastering had to do with getting in the hole and learning about pre-plaster cleanouts, learning about preps, and got a lot of just physical education from being in there and doing that. Once we sold the company, I then got into working with the builders I had been plastering for, and they wanted someone to start up the pool. And so I had no chemical background whatsoever with a test kit or anything. And so I walk up to my first job with my brand new test kit, and it at least was a Taylor and not the little rainbow one. Nonetheless, the guy tells me, he says, well, you can test the water if you want to, but really you just had 2 jugs of chlorine and then put in 3 scoops of Cal Hypo and brush it around and you're set. And I thought, gosh, something doesn't sound very right here.
Right.
So I did a little bit of research and kind of didn't really self-teach, but we did have internet at that time, so I was able to pull up some stuff and kind of developed a process that would work for me and prevent some things from happening. And then I got married and had my kids, so I took a little bit of a time off period. But when I was thinking about coming back to work, I got a phone call from a plaster manufacturer who was having issues with his product in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so he gave me 14 addresses, and I went out and did water testing. I interviewed the startup guy, interviewed the plasters, just all these people, and came up with the issue that was going on with his plaster. And that's kind of how the pool lady got started in doing inspections on swimming pools. And word of mouth kind of got around because there wasn't a lot of people that were doing that, and did that up till 7 years ago when I went to work for Pebble Tech.
That's really interesting too, because that's been a common theme, not just with this particular podcast, but something that we've addressed in multiple kind of anecdotal scenarios where people on this call, people in the industry that we know and work with, have started down a path just because something didn't seem right or didn't pass a smell test. And that starts, it's kind of a catalyst to like, well, there has to be a better way,
Right.
Which it's just funny because it just leads back to the just very, very obvious need for continued education in this industry, and how we could all really, really, as manufacturers, as applicators, as builders, as service professionals, all come together collectively to really raise that bar. So that was kind of music to my ears, Jana, when you said that, because I've gone down so many wormholes for that same reason. Something just chemistry wise didn't pass a smell test. And it's just really funny that for your example, that first experience kind of took you down a path that, here we are now as an industry leader, as a real steward for this particular part of our industry. So that's really cool. So tell us again. So once the pool lady was born, then what's chapter 2?
Well, just really more learning, listening. When you go out and you're trying to figure out what's going on, you can't always just walk up and say, oh, well, this is bad plaster from day one. This is it. There's more to evaluate than just seeing one 4-inch spot in the pool to determine that what caused that issue. And based on the fact that you're dealing with raw mine materials. And not only are you dealing with raw mine materials, you're going over a substrate that plaster is supposed to make beautiful. We're supposed to fix everything that has gone wrong in that pool, whether it be issue with shotcrete or gunite, or if it's an issue with the way the tile was installed. And we, as plasters and applicators, have to make that pretty. So sometimes if we're having to add a vast amount of plaster to fill in something, you're going to get inherent shade differences. And that's not really the issue of the applicator. That goes back to the builder, but we're the last one in. We're the only thing that's probably about 85% cosmetic and serves the purpose by making the vessel watertight, but we've got to make it pretty or else it's our fault. So that realizing that part and making people understand that this is a hand troweled finish. These guys that get in that pool are craftsmen, because you just don't get in there and slosh it around and move it around. Almost anybody can paint, but hardly anybody else can plaster. And that's the technique that we have to use and work with, and then still make it pretty.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely a blend of, and I've learned this, over the years, but it is definitely a blend of not only technical and the technical side of it and being a technician, but also the artistry of it, and that's the thing, is preserving the artistry of the applicator and to maintain these high standards and quality. Jana, when you're out there, are there some really common issues or misses that you see when you're doing an inspection or when you're dealing with an issue that comes across your desk? I mean, is there anything out there that we just see repeatedly from an oversight, or anything you want to kind of shed some light on?
Well, I think initially, probably the number one phone call that you get will be for maybe 30 to 60 days after the pool's done, and it's more towards a scale or metal discoloration. And this kind of goes back and enhances our program of startups, because we go into the importance of having a very controlled water environment for the first 28 to 30 days of that pool being filled. Where I see the biggest issue is once the homeowner is taught pool school, they are taught once a week you do this. Once a week you test. Once a week you add chemicals. But they're never taken to the point of, if you have a party of 10 to 15 people, you need to balance the water the next day. If you have a 2 to 3 inch rain, you need to rebalance the water the next day. Therefore, once a week, they're not doing too much. Once a week is the only time that they are servicing and paying attention to the pool, when it's more frequent the need is based on what's going on in that body of water.
Uh-huh.
And that's when the pool is curing. As it cures, you have the pH that is very hard to maintain at one levels, as that plaster dust is curing, causing the pH of the water to rise. So those are the things, because they don't see the dust anymore. They don't think that they have to rebalance the pool or brush as often. But it's still
I have to concur, because I as a quality, I don't know if quality control, but part of my job for David Cook Plaster Company is to, go out, site projects, but then also handle the, not that we get a lot of complaints, but those types of complaints. Go out, Rob, the pigment is coming out of the gray finish that you just put in for me. And I go there and bring my brush, bring my kit, and prove to them that no, pigment's still there. It's just you have a layer of scale or carbonation that's over the top of the pool, and here's the reason why. And the biggest thing I get is nobody told me. Nobody told me about this. So I know in my presentations with pool builders, and when we do remodels, is I preface things as saying, you're gonna call me in 2 to 3 months, especially Mr. Homeowner, if you're taking care of the pool, and you're gonna tell me just that, Rob, the pigment's coming out. I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna tell you no, this is why, because I actually compare the environment to that of, it's snowing on your pool surface when it turns white. The only difference is it doesn't melt. We have to bring in ways to make that melt. So it is fundamentally the biggest callback I get is poor water chemistry and the misunderstanding or that not understanding the relationship between the water and the new finish and what's causing all of that. And it comes down to basically expectation, not setting the proper expectation, not explaining things right to the homeowner. And frankly, pool guys, if you're listening, I know you know water chemistry, and God bless you, but there are certain things that we do have to tell the customer that is more than once a week, and we know that you can only get there when you're servicing it outside of the first 2 weeks of startup, once a week.
And that's a hard habit to break, especially for the pool operator or the homeowner, because, and I'll be the first to raise my hand, working for a chemical manufacturer, our side of the industry has definitely conditioned the homeowner to the once a week protocol, right? Like, here's your test strips, you put them in there, shock once a week, add your all your ancillary stuff once a week, check your tabs, whatever you're using to sanitize the water. But basically the hands-on, getting your hands wet, protocol has been established by a lot of manufacturers, and especially, chemical manufacturers, just because of the convenience. I mean, we've all seen it. It's marketed to like, hey, take care of your pool in X amount of time on Sunday, right? And it's just kind of been inherently passed on. A lot of service companies come once a week, and that is a challenge, kind of breaking out of that thought. But you also have to look not only at the schedule and the commitment of time, obviously, that you look at the pool, but we understand this, of course, but it needs to be conveyed to the homeowner. I mean, it really does, or the pool operator. I mean, for sure, that there's many, many times and many instances where once a week just isn't enough, And another thing we need to look at, I think, is stop looking strictly at the pool water, because people say, oh, my water's clear. So I don't need to test it. It looks good. It's not green. It's not this. It's not that. My surface looks okay. Yeah, it's getting a little rougher, but, it's there. There is a lot more. We're looking at everything. The optics are very narrow. And I think that moving forward, and one of the goals of this podcast is really to kind of back that out a little bit and get a much more comprehensive and intimate understanding of all of the variables that happen in this very large vessel of water. Including the surface, obviously, that's the other thing that just goes so neglected so often, especially by a lot of service companies. It's the surface. How's it looking? Are they brushing often, et cetera, et cetera? I mean,
the time commitment is understandably difficult. Totally. And there's a cost attached to that time commitment. You have to dedicate, if you're a service company, you have to dedicate a body to go to that pool every day for as long as your startup procedure is. And a lot of guys, I remember when I was building pools with my dad, it was every day for 2 weeks. We gave you 12 visits because we didn't work Sunday. Sunday was the homeowner's day to brush the pool. But we came out there every day and brushed the pool once a day. We didn't go twice a day, and we did absolutely everything we could within the parameters of the startup card with the time that we had allowed. Otherwise, it would have cost $6,000 to do the whole thing. Now, to the average person, that's a lot of money to invest in a couple of weeks worth of, and I'm not trying to say, but just, it could be up to that point. So, the time commitment, very hard. And you got guys that are just like, I can't do it. Either they're a one person company, or even a multi-person company. They've got too many clients that they can't dedicate a body to that pool. So what happens, it gets neglected. The pool doesn't get brushed. It gets scaled. Robbie gets called. Jana gets called. Flies all over the country just to say your water chemistry's off, Yeah.
And then the inevitable because it's such an easy shortcut to make. It really is. It's such an easy corner to cut. But we've all seen it. Then the finger pointing starts.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Well, I think for the builder and the service guys, they want to clean, they want a sparkling pool, go jump in it.
Yep.
And that's the startup class. That's what we really try. The most important part for Plaster is certainly the first 28 days, and what we're trying to teach them, all that goes on in that first really the first week, but obviously throughout, and then what it takes to keep it maintained and what affects Plaster after the first 28 days.
Yeah.
People want it sanitized and clean so they can party in it, but they're not realizing the longevity and the life of the Plaster. And that's what we've really tried to educate people on with the one class. We've certainly done a very good job, and Jana's been a big part of, teaching the industry that class. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the need for the understanding of how crucial that first 28 days is just, it can't be stressed enough. It really can't. And that's one of those things where when I'm helping out, when I'm communicating and working, focused on some of these endeavors in the industry, it's like I'm a broken record. It's the first 30 days is everything. It is everything. It is everything. So, obviously that's going to be some of the spirit that goes into further and continued and enhance educational opportunities that are offered by organizations like the NPC. And there may or may not be a big announcement at the end of this podcast, so stay tuned. But yeah, I mean, Jana, how do you see it? I mean, being, if not the professional, being the utmost, one of the a handful of most knowledgeable folks in the industry. I mean, how do you explain the importance of that startup process to folks? As not without getting in the real nitty gritty, but just conveying how important it really is to commit to it.
Well, it's there are some people that don't think that there's that much science in a pool. I mean, when they want a body of water to jump in, and they want something cleaner than a lake.
Yep, swimming hole.
Exactly.
Cement pond.
Cement pond. And within the last couple of years, there was a gentleman that had a dark finish, and it was a Pebble Tech interior finish, and he had a pool service that he hired after about 2.5, 3 weeks. But at that point, the pool had severely scaled. And when we tried to explain the process of a pool startup, even this builder didn't know he needed to be doing a startup. And he said, I talked to all my neighbors around here. They don't do something every day on a swimming pool. I said, that's correct. This is a brand new pool. This is something else that requires that attention. And so you are going to have those people that are just going to refuse that there is a process that pool must go through. But that has to kind of trickle down. We almost have to connect with our builders and let the builder know, and most of them do, but still there's some that don't understand that there is a process for that pool to continue to look good, because to be honest with you, I think a pool looks better at the end of 28 days than it does in the very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a process that we have to go through to get it to look that good. So we really need to be reaching out, and I know the builders send their people, but the builders also need to understand how important this is. And I see more companies readily adapting to willing to send someone more frequently than what they used to. I mean, I hear of companies that babysit that pool for the 28 days to make sure at the end of that time it's being treated as it should be. So it's getting out there, but we just need to continue that message to our industry.
I could attest to that, especially here in the Northeast. I not only sit on the NPC board, I'm also on the national board, Northeast Pool Association board here, and I've watched Jana teach the class, the startup class here. I've helped her with others when Greg was teaching the class, and the feedback that comes from the students in that is tremendous, and you can see it being put in place out in the field. My customers, other folks, they do here I can speak for. They're getting a better understanding of how to start the pools up, the dedication that is needed to go put to that, and those guys are fairly successful at keeping the pool away from the scale. In certain special cases they call up. I followed everything to the NPC card, and even what Greg told me. And there's some. It's not easy to manage a pool that has a 12.6 pH coming out of the wall for. We say for the first 30 days, but it's longer than that. It's 60, it's 90, it could be 120 days that this is still going off. All these chemical reactions are going off. So it's a big fight. And if you think the fight's over in the first 2 weeks, you're wrong. But, I believe that our program has been very successful out here. The word has spread out, and it's always a packed room. And we fill that room with 50 plus people every time we have it at the Atlantic City show, or the Pool and Spa show powered by NESPA.
Good plug there, Robbie. Good plug.
Yeah.
So Jana, I have a question for you. So other than startup, you've seen a lot of pools. What other thing that we at the NPC, we know because we're in the organization, we go to the conference education, the stuff that we haven't really taken out in the world. This isn't a setup, by the way. But what other thing do you see is like the next biggest thing that's causing problems for our industry that with maybe the right education we could, we might be able to get that out of the way?
Well, and I think this may be something that is going to be a little bit more predominant in the next season. With the shortage of the 3-inch tabs, we're going to have people that are going to be changing their sources of chlorine. And instead of using a tab that has a very low pH of 2.8, they're possibly going to be using liquid chlorine, which has a very high pH of 12.8 to 13. Or the Cal Hypo, which is very similar in pH to the liquid chlorine.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that's going to be something that people are going to have to relearn. I mean, they've been in this process of throwing in the tablets and then throwing in a bag of shock when needed. And now it's just going to be different. And I think that when you have a high pH chlorine, and you're not adjusting your pH of the pool water prior to adding the high pH chlorine, that you're going to have an opportunity for more staining and scaling to occur on that surface.
Yep.
So I think that's probably what the big thing is that we'll be seeing next year.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. Jana, I think you're exactly right. It's going to be a change, right? We're going to have to change as an industry of how we do things, and not just from builders, but service, from retail. I mean, you name it. There's going to be a shortage for the next 12 to 18 months of trichlor, 3-inch tablets, 1-inch tablets, and with having said that, the good news is that there's still plenty of viable and plentiful options to sanitize and keep these bodies of water free from disease and bacteria. That's the most important thing as far as swimmer and bather safety, Having said that, though, there's going to be a huge learning curve to exactly what you said. And it's not just, again, I don't want to look at this and from a real thin optic here, a narrow optic. It's not just about maintaining residual chlorine or the convenience of what do I add? I'm used to adding tabs. Do I have to add this? Are we installing that? It's more, how does that affect the overall characteristics and the water itself? To your point, we are going to most likely see shifts where there's going to be more liquid. There's going to be more Cal Hypo as opposed to trichlor, which is going to have a lingering and lasting effect or a shift on what standing water or what the water in these pools looks like from a pH level, from a hardness level, from many different aspects. And we have to shift to that, and as a chemical manufacturer, we're looking at a lot of educational need also to explain what type of chelator and sequestering agents are going to also need to be put in play to prevent from scaling and discoloration because of these shifts that are going to occur when it comes to sanitation in the water. So there's so much to unravel moving forward in 2021 and into 2022. Let's just be honest. But people are going to do it a different way, and that's not a bad thing. I've always said that change is good. So what a better time. There's no better time right now than to implement a lot of these educational strategies to really do what we're doing as an industry better. That's really what it is when it comes to the overall chemistry and maintaining of that in the water. I think that's such a great point that we need to stress as an industry.
I think how low the cyanuric acid levels are going to be in these pools now.
Yeah. It may be a blessing.
Yeah. And that's definitely a whole other episode right there.
It is.
Yeah, but
Brett's.
Yeah. CY is going to be it's going to be different. It's just everything's going to be different.
Well, that kind of goes back to what Brent's question was. What else do I see when I go out there?
Yes.
And it does have to do with high cyanuric acid levels in the pool and how that people don't quite understand how that affects their total alkalinity because the test cannot discern from a cyanurate and an alkalinity once it gets that high. So you get a false alkalinity reading. I went to a pool this year that the rocks were just sheeting off the walls. And he had a saltwater pool, but he kept his cyanuric acid over 100 parts per million. And he always kept his pH. It's 6.8, but didn't know he had to do anything with alkalinity, which was 0 when I got there. And so and it was, a 7.5 or 6 or 7 year old finish. And so he said, am I going to have to redo this? I said, yes, there's no way that you can't just put the rock back on. It requires the whole process for it to be what it needs to be. But I see that a whole lot whenever I see issues with pools. And once you have the high cyanuric acid and a low alkalinity, then that water is starved from alkalinity, and it goes to the cement that's holding your finish together, whether you have a marble, quartz, pebble, it doesn't matter. It's going to pull that cement and dissolve that cement to get that calcium carbonate back into the water. And that's where all your pigment is in that cement. So that's when we start seeing the etching deterioration or the little white circles around the aggregates in a pigmented finish. And that's probably the second big, like I say, high cyanuric acid pools is the second biggest problem I see.
All right, so it goes back to the whole thing where, water means something different to plaster than it does to bathers, and that's what that's what we got to educate on. And, so you should take our startup and maintenance course. It's really good, and we teach you that.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, everyone that I know, personally or professionally that has taken that class, and really it isn't that I'm plugging it. This is real. They've always walked out of there feeling very enlightened, very happy they took the class, more comfortable, and understanding why things happen the way they do. A lot of times, I remember growing up and with being in the pool industry since I was like 10, and working for my father. The service tax back then, we're going back into like 1981, 82, the 90s. You just throw, the pH is here, just throw a couple of handfuls of minus or plus in there and some bicarb, and you're all set. So walk around the pool with some shock and no problem. Calcium? What was calcium? We had no idea. Calcium didn't do anything with that. I didn't know what calcium was till much later, and what it did. But knowing the why really helped me personally, professionally, and the techs, what have you. Just so it's explaining why things are happening. It's key for these guys.
I will say that since I've been in the industry, I used to believe that about 85% of most pool builders didn't have a clue about balancing pool water. That's when they said, just take it down to the corner, get it tested. They'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And now I do believe over the last 10 years or so that builders are a little bit more aware, or not a little bit more, they are aware how the source water affects even the fill, just at filling. You really need to know what that source water is before you ever start filling that pool, so that when you get ready to balance that water, then you've got the right ratios going in. And, there's several different types of startup. The NPC is one of the most basic types of startup that I think is out there, but it will work with almost any pool as long as you know what the startup fill water is going to be. But if you don't know that before you start, then you can't do a whole lot afterwards if it sits there for 3 days without anything going on, like I've seen some pools before. So it's important to have your electricity hooked up. It's important to have the equipment set. Just brushing a pool of water that's not being circulated is going to buy you much time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, so I'll say, we've talked a lot with Jana about the startup and maintenance course quite a bit. I mean, it's something that we've backed and we've done a good job with and taught the industry, and it's so vitally important. We want to share more with you, and that's what we wanted to talk about next today was some of the efforts that are going on, some moves that the NPC has made, some information that we'd like to share with you, and so just talking about the efforts a little bit. And Jana, please stay with us, contribute to, whatever you like in this conversations as well. So
I will.
So one big announcement that we haven't, again, it's been put out, I think, on Facebook and maybe a few other platforms, but we wanted to share it here. We hired recently our new Director of Technical Service, Mr. Kent Westfall. Kent was going to be with us on today's thing, but some events happened. He's not on the call with us, on the podcast with us today, but he will be very soon. We'll probably do a one-on-one with Chris, Rob, and I, and we'll do that. So that's some big news. We now have somebody, when the phone calls come in, available, to help you, to work with you, or to direct you to somebody that can, and then working on it and kind of directing some of the other efforts that we're doing there as far as building the education with all the great committee folks that we have that are involved, which there's committee folks on this entire call here. Hello. Yeah. Please join a committee. We love people coming and joining and sharing what they know, and
absolutely,
we all learn something every day. So, another major announcement, which is going to lead to some of our other efforts, is again, maybe it just hasn't been verbalized. For factors outside of our control, COVID-19 being the major factor, and our conference was to be held in San Diego, California, sunny and lovely. We are going virtual with our conference, so we definitely make sure that folks knew that, but know that we are what it's really done is it's fast tracking what we're doing as far as our education goes. We're going to be bringing you a virtual conference. We have some things virtual, but it's really making us kind of learn that platform and bring you from the teachers that we were going to have at the conference to even, again, the classes we'll talk about in a little bit coming down the road, really getting us prepared to not only bring them virtually, but when we can come out and see you in the world, shake your hand, talk to you in a classroom full of people. We're building these things right now. And on top of that, what we've done really recently within the committees is, so we've always had conference education. We've had a committee based on that, and it takes, believe it or not, I think we on average have, Robert, Jan, do you know how many classes do we promote? Is it 3 tracks and
at the show? I think it's
20 something. 24. I think it's 24 classes.
Yeah. Over a day.
So that takes a committee and a big effort almost all year to get that put together, prepared to bring to conference. But what we realized, and again, some of the realization that Greg shared with us, we take our information out in the field. It's needed, it's necessary, and it serves purposes for both the NPC, our members, and for the industry in general is building the content. So we have an education task force that we've built, and we have those folks focused on, again, building this education out of our tech manual, the stuff that's important to the industry from a plaster perspective, that we're going to have available to take. Somebody can do it regionally at a trade show, or we can do it virtually. We want to build it so it's, it will be unique in itself, but that the information's there. The important parts of what we want people to know and that are important will be built into those classes. So again, just a major effort. I think that, Rob, I think you're on, Jana, I think you're on that education task force. We've been tackling, water, the startup class. I mean, just honing that to make it a little bit more consumable and digestible to the, to the different areas. And so we can have a multi-platform with it. Any comment on that, guys?
No, I know we're pretty excited to be putting, especially these the 5 core classes that we've been working on together for the members and beyond. I think we have a lot of talented, smart people that are part of the NPC. These are guys that are in the hole, and just like Jan has explained her past history and experience, it's all done through just that trial, error, and making it right, and trying to put it down on paper to share with the industry. So when the show when it does come time for the show, and you're sitting here going, I didn't make it to San Diego, or for those folks that were saying I was never going to make it to San Diego, there's an opportunity to really be part of something in a dull time, or a rough time, and take advantage of what we're putting out there and make yourselves and your crews better. See, Jana wants to say something.
Well, I was just saying, the one thing about this education committee, the new one, task force, is that we're also reviewing some of our previous materials to see if we are current with some of the changes that have been made with the ANSI standards and what IPSSA or PHTA have done with their codes and standards. And so this task force reviews that, so that when you sit and this will be, I think, the 4th revision of the startup card since we published that in 2006. And it's not that we're making huge changes in the methodology, but we are making sure that we're staying current with what is becoming code in all these different areas. So
it's code, it's practice, it's addressing, cleaning up the language so understood a little better.
Right.
Jana and I, we were both on that particular call, and I tell you, it's really cool to see that we're able to evolve along with as the industry is evolving, NPC is evolving with it, trying to keep up with today's best practices for today, and that'll never change.
Yeah, I think I can share. We had somebody from the industry that's been using our startup, came to our class, educated his people, thought it was great, and for whatever reason, he wasn't having the greatest success, and it came down to the fact that he took one thing very literally from the class. It was a literal interpretation that maybe we weren't so clear on. So, we don't take that as offensive. We take it as, we better adjust that. We better make it make sense. And not only that, we need to invite that guy because, he had the wherewithal to tell us, hey, it's not working for me. It's actually, I'm not interested anymore. And here's why. So hey, it wasn't stated wrong. It was just interpreted wrong because of the way it read. So again, interpretation's everything. So not only, hey, this is really what that means, but hey, why don't you join us? Come on a committee. Let's go help us fix these things, because everything's seen differently from different people. And so I thought I'd share that because I think it's important. I think we are a group of industry people. It's not just plasters. It's all different people. Chemical guys, pump and filter guys, builders.
We have a very strong builder and service membership, along with not just a circle of plasters, as you said, because they want to know. The builders and the service companies, they want to know how to do things right. They don't want the callbacks. They don't want the scale. They want to understand what their subs are doing for them and how to, because it's once the plaster is done, he pretty much mixed up a bunch of a cement batch, applied it well, and left, and then you add the water, and then everything happens when the water goes in. So how to understand that relationship between the plasterer and the builder, and understanding what we know as plasters and what the builder should know, which we want, I think you know what I'm saying. He wants to understand what we know better, make his product better.
Well, yeah, and the great thing I'd say, because of the mix of folks, is because we understand it because we know it, but when we're teaching it, we have an understanding. Maybe they don't understand it the same way. I guess that's what I'm getting at. So the more perspective, the better. And I think we welcome that. And we're working very hard to create that, by committee and with focus. So it's exciting. It's exciting because we've been wanting to do some of these things. And I think, like I said, the fact that the conference is virtual, beyond that, we were kind of going in this trajectory already. That we're building this content based on our white papers, our research, our tech manual, and we want to get that out there. So we talk a little bit. So what we wanted to do, again, this besides talking to Jana, which we've thoroughly enjoyed. Wanted to this was an introduction to a series. And the series is talking about, which I guess I've said a million times, feel like I just keep repeating, the content classes that we're creating. So startup and maintenance, boy, we talked about a lot of that one, but we will certainly have its own podcast. We started getting the bits and pieces of that today. That could be a day-long podcast, I think, if we wanted it to be. A lot of idiosyncrasies. So we'll but that's going to be a good one that people will have an understanding of. If they've taken our class, I think they'll be very interested in hearing what's now, because like you guys just shared, Rob and Jana, that there's things that change all the time. Chris was talking earlier about, the pH levels, because the chlorine's going to change, how we introduce that to the pool. It's going to change the water chemistry. So I'm sure that'll be a part of that conversation. Another one, which Robbie is kind of the star of right now, is our surface prep class that we're going to be, that we're building and bringing. And, again, in person, LMS style type classes, computer learn, something that, we want to bring this to as many people as possible and that they get our information. Jan, I was trying to bait you earlier with, you said it earlier, so I was trying to bait you and said, what else do you see with surface prep? I worked for a plaster company for a while, so we used to see a lot of times spots in pools. You mentioned it in one of your early statements that, there's a spot in the pool. Because we are filling holes with plaster instead of bringing them to level, an even surface, and you got thicker versus thinner, and it hydrates differently, and now all of a sudden you got a football. Well, where'd that come from? So we get to discover that and figure it out, but, as a lot of plasters, the builders do the prep. So we want to make sure that we're teaching, different methods. A big one now, and I know we're going to have a water blaster on that podcast. Water blasting has become a pretty big thing in our industry as far as surface prep goes. And that takes it off, but you still got to get it to a certain level. So we want to make sure that we cover those things, and that kind of information's on our class. We want to talk about materials and just the standards that apply to the materials we use in plaster. There's all kinds of cements, but we want certain ones. So we're going to, there's a lot of information outside of us, just the concrete industry or the cement industry brings knowledge. And we have people that are, at play in that industry that come over into ours and bring some really great information. But just kind of the standards we're looking for, whether it's for tile, coping materials, obviously plaster materials. So we'll have an education course on that. I think a big one that's going to be a great one is plaster placement. I don't think most people know, thickness of plaster, timing of plaster, water content, all these things that are so important at application. That one's going to be interesting. I think a lot of people are going to really, really enjoy that class, and to try and understand what our tradespeople are doing when they're putting the product on the walls. And then I think another one that we do well at now, but I think bringing it into a consolidated class would be a troubleshooting and repairs scenario. So those are kind of the 5, subjects. If I talk too much on one or the other, hopefully you pick those out. But that's our next conversations, I think, and we'll pick those out. Well, you guys can comment on the podcast if you want one or the other. We'd like to say that, but some of them are really at infancy stages with the group and being built. But we like to hear what's important to everyone.
Yeah, and I'd like to add too, Brent, as we kind of wrap this up, is just there's been a lot of thought and philosophy put into these 5 core tracks or 5 core topics with the startup maintenance, surface preparation, the materials and standards, plaster placement, and troubleshooting and repair. But ultimately, these 5 kind of core curriculums, the goal is to get everybody not only to be, a higher level of professional, to offer and have a higher finished craft to offer, but also it's to break a lot of the tribal knowledge that plagues a lot of this industry and a lot of this particular niche in it. We are really good in the pool and spa industry about teaching bad habits, and that you look across the board. It's undeniably a funny thing about our little thing, but That's one of
I've been doing this for 30 years.
We've all heard it. I've never seen this. What's that? I've never had to worry about that before. So
we're doing it right.
Goal, to take it to that next level, and the time is now to really commit and kind of buy in on not only operators, but just business owners and practitioners to take their game to the next level, to take their craft to the next level. And I think this is a great opportunity, this 5 core curriculum to do that. It really, really is. And there's a lot of horsepower of experience and also forward thinking and science behind a lot of it too. So I'm excited about this. What's the best way we can tell the audience out there how to kind of take it to the next level as far as buy-in?
Take one of our classes. Pay attention to when we put our show on in February, and sign up. But take my prep course. Take Jana's startup. Kent Westfall is going to be teaching that. Yeah. You got a lot of smart people that are teaching a lot of good information that's coming out of all of these education committees and task force that we put together. Take advantage of that and see the difference when you put it into practice in your own business. I think that's where it's really going to pay off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you enjoy the show, we're going to be bringing you some people too. We're going to bring you some guys that are, involved in these things in the field, and we'll talk. If this is your platform, great. Log on to here, listen to us, and hear what people are saying and what they're doing and why they're doing it. I think the classes are going to give you all the way down to the nitty gritty, where we're going to just kind of scratch the surface, maybe on one aspect or 2 aspects of a certain scenario. But any way you can, educate yourself. That's our, we want to educate. That's what's given us credence, and we are going to continue to work on that and make sure that we're giving great content.
Mm-hmm. I've been doing this close to 35 years myself, and one of the best things I get out of this is I know I'm always learning something new. I don't know everything like Jana does, but I don't know everything.
No. There's not one startup class that I don't teach that I don't learn something from somebody in there. It's a give and take, and I love it. That's the reason I enjoy teaching it, is because you learn something as you're teaching, and that's that shared information this industry needs.
Well, on that note, I think that's a pretty smooth finish right there. What do you think, Brent and Rob?
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Watch for the information coming out about the conference, which will be in February. And the same week that it is, we'll have information about signups, vendors, opportunities to sponsor, all that good stuff. We'll get Kent on soon, hopefully, mixed in with this series, just to you guys get to know him, and we'll try and ask the right questions. But otherwise, everybody, thanks for listening, and look forward to talking to you real soon.
Yeah, thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
All right, guys.
Have great holidays. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye, guys.